Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, joined by my editor, Jim Ayello. Jim, we're back, baby. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. This was not the Super Bowl I think everybody wanted to see, but I think as we'll get into in a little bit, you and me are I think rare in that we both wanted to see the Chiefs win and the
I
three-peat. We can
did.
get into why later, but I was having a conversation with James ahead of time, or like yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, we're kindred spirits here. We were both rooting for the Chiefs for slightly different reasons, I think, but yeah, we were both rooting for the Chiefs, so that'll be fun." And you know what, man? I've been anti-Eagles all year in terms of I just didn't think Jalen Hurts was it, but you know what? They continue to prove me wrong. Saquon Barkley is incredible, and it should be a fun game. So I'm excited. I know
I
everybody
am
hates the rematch, but I'm excited.
I'm all for rematches and the storyline, all the cliches, and things like that. So we'll get into that. Quick rundown of the show. We will start with talking about some Colts free agents and possibly some free agent needs, as well as Lou Anarumo. Met him for the first time last week, and then we'll wrap it up with some Super Bowl talk, which I'm sure all of you are just champing at the bit for. So to start things off, Jim,
Yep.
we had to make a list at the
Yes.
Athletic of the Colts' top 10, 8 to 10. I got to 7 list of
It's a stretch.
impending
It was a
free
stretch.
agents. And honestly, I
Yeah.
was thinking when I did this exercise that we'll get into. Last year, it would have been so easy to do this because they had so
Yeah.
many like top guys that they had to re-sign and consider. Obviously, Pittman was tagged. You had Kenny Moore that was a free agent. Grover Stewart was a free agent, and so there were a number of really talented players on this team that were free agents. Whereas now, I'm looking at this list and I'm like, man, they probably need to go out and get some more talent rather than trying to keep a lot of these guys, around the franchise going forward. Number one on our list, which we had some debate over, was
Yeah.
Will Fries. And so I will let you sort of explain why. And just to be clear on this for those
Yeah.
listening, when I made the list, I did not have Will Fries number one, but Jim convinced me pretty easily that he is number one, despite the injury that he suffered this past season.
And that's the big thing. Like I think you had mentioned, even in your write up, I think initially, and to be fair, to be clear, we were debating between Ryan Kelly and Dio Deng, but I think those are the clear top three for the Colts right now. If you wanted to put them in somewhat any order, I could see arguments for all of them. But the reason with Fries was essentially if he had not suffered that broken leg, he was on his way to having a breakout season, which you wrote. And I think there are so many teams around the NFL that are in dire need of of better interior line play. Like the Vikings, we all watch what happened to the Vikings in the playoffs.
Yes.
Like if they had a guy like Will Fry stick him at right guard, they might win that game. I mean, again, not to say it was, again, it may be overstating a little bit, but they need interior line help. The Bears need interior line help. Like you can go through the list and I would highly encourage you guys at the reading the Athletic, look around at some other teams and look at their offseason needs. There's a lot of interior line. Also, it helps you can look at those lists that James created, but other teams are going to be making these. Other beat writers are going to be making these. So it's really interesting to see what they had to say about their impending free agents. But on Will Fries, I mean, he was essentially playing like a top 10 guard through the first 5 weeks of the season, and he's 26 years old. Um, I just think there's going to be a heavy, heavy demand for a guy like that now of the guys on this list that you wrote, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he is the only one that comes back for the Colts. I think
So
Chris Ballard has made pretty clear about the idea of needing to bring in outside talent and the right guys, but I have a hard time believing he's going to let Will Fries walk out the door. But what do you think?
I agree. Before I dive quickly into that, I will just rattle off the names here. Again, I got the
Yeah.
7 names. It's Will Fries number one, Dio Odangbo number two, Ryan Kelly number three, number four is Julian Blackman, number five, EJ Speed, number six, Molly Cox, number seven, Joe Flacco, ageless Joe. And then honorable mentions, we had Ashton Doolin, Sam Ellinger, Colin Granson, and Grant Stewart, who I think had an outstanding season as a backup special teamer linebacker presence. And so, to answer your question about Will, I do think that he'll be brought back, and I also think that this is not a shot at the Colts at all, but he should not cost as much as he would have, which
Right.
is like everything the Colts always want in free agency. It's like we want to get somebody who's not a super high end pay, and that's what they haven't done in the past. And I know Chris Ballard has often said he doesn't want to play, A plus money for B talent and things like that. Will Fries. He's been in your building. Other teams might not be as comfortable, with his injury or with his play, whatever the case may be. But you have all his medical records. You've drafted him. You've known him. And it
Hmm.
does, he did make it clear that he really appreciates the opportunity that Indianapolis has given him. He was a seventh round pick in 2021, worked his way up the ranks, and obviously was on pace to have his best year ever. I believe he was on pace to have like his lowest pressure rate allowed,
Yep.
4.1%, which is pretty good, down from 4.8%, which was a year ago when he really, kind of came into his own. So I do think that the Colts will prioritize bringing him back, and they should, especially considering that if you move on from Ryan Kelly and you don't know what's going on with Braden Smith, and just for the sake of argument, you say you move on from Braden Smith, you're trying to get a younger and probably cheaper on the offensive line. And so he's kind of in that sweet spot where he probably won't cost a super, super pretty penny like he would have had he stayed healthy. But also, he's still pretty young, too, where if you re up him for a few years, he's not going to be some guy you're looking at like, wow, he's going to be 35 at the end of this contract. He'll be 29 or 30 by the end of his next deal. So I think that that's a smart, safe move for them. I had a chance to talk to Will Fries at locker cleanout day, and he dismissed all the free agency talk, and it was a bit understandable because that was the first time we had talked to him since the injury. And so he was telling us he was walking around, obviously not his regular gait and things like that, but he did tell us, hey, I'm doing well. Didn't put a timetable on his return, but he was saying he was doing some pull work at the time, getting some feel back in his legs. And he said his number one priority was just getting back healthy and then letting his agents and things like that handle what's to come with free agency. Because he will have suitors. Let's make that very clear. Like, this isn't a, he tore his ACL, he tore his Achilles. We don't know if he's going to be the same. And as I was telling you yesterday, Jim, not to be bogus, but it's true. If you break a bone, in certain cases, it's almost better to break a bone than like a tear a ligament, have nerve damage, things like that. So as
Right.
bad as it looked, as bad as it obviously felt for him, this injury, bones heal a lot better than other, body parts and other, parts that make up what you need as an athlete. So it does sound like he'll be fine. He had a regular surgery for what the injury was, and I would expect him to be ready, close to the season, if not ready for the season coming up in 2025.
I just want to mention too, like you mentioned the suitors. Pro Football Focus is what it is. It can be good as a tool to use, but I just, they made their top 100 list of free agents already, and Will Fries is number 24. They haven't considered him a top 25
Yeah.
free agent. They compared him in his free agent candidacy to Damian Lewis, who signed a 4-year, $53 million deal with the Panthers last year. Similar age, he turned 27, similar production. So again, I really do expect there to be the guard market kind of exploded last offseason. We saw some guys get way bigger deals than we expected them to do. Carolina paid a ton of money for interior guard play. The Rams paid a ton of money for interior guard play. The Giants overpaid for a couple of guys that were maybe just, baseline starters, but they had to overpay to improve their offensive
Right.
line. I just think a guy like Will Fries is going to be important, and I love the point that you brought up. If you have uncertainty at center, which again, maybe it's not uncertainty, you're maybe expecting Tanner Bortolini to take over, but you
Right.
don't know necessarily what he's going to be for a full season. You don't know what you're going to get out of right tackle. Getting some stability at right guard with a guy that can play and play it at a pretty high level is really smart. And I will say this last thing about Chris Ballard. We've all criticized and critiqued some of his roster building techniques, but I will say one of the things that if you're looking around at the Super Bowl teams, the conference championship teams, these are teams that put a lot of money and resource into their offense and defensive lines. And Chris Ballard, to his credit, has done that. They've spent a lot of money. At one point, they had the highest paid offensive line in football. They need to start kind of rebuilding and retooling that a little bit. So I don't think this is the wrong place to invest in money. Again, we don't want to get into the place where he's just paying his own guys and running it back, but you don't want to let a talented young offensive lineman out the door either. So I expect the Colts to be very competitive in the Will Fries market, but we'll see. Obviously, we'll see. We're going to talk about this later with the Eagles and kind of the offense the Colts should want to be. Having a great offensive line is part of that, and taking the burden off of Anthony Richardson and the quarterback with Jalen Hurts. So again, letting a talented young offensive lineman out the door, not the best strategy for doing that. So again, I fully expect the Colts to be in on Will Fries. But now we can move on to Dio Dangbo here, which is a much more interesting case for the Colts because talented player, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But they've spent a lot of money at this position already, and he didn't have the best year in terms of pure production, though he played a lot of snaps, doesn't miss time, still a young player. So what are your thoughts on Dio and bringing him back?
Yeah, you know what? It was shocking to me when I looked at what he had done this season or what he hadn't done. Like I
Mm,
couldn't believe that he only had 3 sacks the entire season, and he had played all 17 games, started a career high 14 games. Now, granted, depending on what defense you start in, that can sway some things. So don't read too much into like those types of things.
yeah.
Look at the snap count. Snaps, he was a career high 64%. Which is a good rate for a defensive lineman. Keep in mind, they rotate those guys out often. So you're not going to see a D lineman
Yep.
play 100% of the snaps like an offensive lineman would. And so, all things considered, it was weird to say the least. And again, you also would think that with the injury to Samson Ebukam, that Dio would have had more opportunity to make those splash plays, and he just didn't really do them. And so, it's one of those things where do you criticize him for not producing more, or do you criticize the defense for not getting more out of him? Now, he did get a new defensive line coach in Charlie Partridge. Did that play a factor in it and things like that? Obviously, they drafted Laiatu Latu, which would take some snaps away from anybody else on the defensive line. So there was some people you had to share the wealth with.
Yeah.
But again, not, I know for him, an ideal way to end his rookie deal because you definitely want to, be that player you were just 2 years ago. He had 8 sacks 2 years ago. We all thought, man, this guy's on the cusp turning a corner, and then he kind of regressed a bit. But as you mentioned, about to be 26, had 8 sacks 2 years ago, doesn't miss any time after, I believe he came out with an Achilles injury, hasn't been hurt since. And, the question becomes, like I said, if another team looks at him and his size, and you can also, the good thing about Dio is, which doesn't really show up on the stat sheet, is you can move him inside too. Like he's not just an outside guy. He's not just an edge rusher. He's a pretty
Yeah.
big body. He can be a decent run stopper as well and plug some holes and things like that. So again, I say all that to say, would another team be like, okay, we can use this guy a little bit differently than the Colts did, and with whatever talent we have on our roster, he can uphold it. And one of the names or places I was just thinking of, and I have no idea of Dio Dangbo's, free agency thinking. This is just me just spitballing purely, so do
Yeah.
not aggregate this and lie on my name. But one of the places I was just thinking was, okay, Nate Ollie, who you had your breakout season with, a year ago, he's now in Atlanta. Like, do you go down to Atlanta and try to, get some things done with him? Or is that a spot that you're interested in looking at to kind of rekindle that success you had? And obviously money will play a factor in all those things, but just the place that I was thinking, would he, go and find Nate Ollie? Because I know a lot of those guys, nothing against Charlie Partridge, but a lot of those guys had a ton of respect for what Nate Ollie did in his season in 2023, where they led, I believe it was like a franchise record in sacks. They had a really, solid year. Obviously, they had some other deficiencies defensively, but the D line, we all thought like, man, that's the strength of this team. And they all regressed this year in Nate Ollie's absence. Obviously, DeForest Buckner's injury played a factor in those things as well. Samson Ebukam, like I mentioned, him being out for
Yeah.
the year. But I think Dio will definitely have some suitors. And again, when we talked, we kind of shuffled around the names because his age, like you said, should help him as well. Like he's a young player. He's a
Yeah.
good player. Even if he never becomes, this breakout, game changing guy, he is a solid player. I think that he can definitely add value to a team.
I think the point you brought up in your story too was interesting is that the Colts have already picked up Quiddy Pace 5th-year option for
That's
paying
why
him
I'm like, I think he's gone.
13.4 million. Obviously you drafted Latu in the first round, so that's not, I mean, he's on a rookie contract, but it's not cheap necessarily. So I definitely think they've invested in the position the way, I'm not gonna say as the most that you can. They can't afford to keep investing in the position. Obviously, keeping a young, talented defensive player around, guy who can slide inside and outside, like you said, has shown the ability to get pressure the quarterback. I think Lou Anarumo would probably ask Chris Ballard not to let a guy like that go. I mean, just because you don't want to let talented young guys out the door, but they do have to make some decisions about where they're going to spend their money. And this is a team that we know, like, just because they have salary cap space doesn't mean they're going to spend the cash on the players that they need to bring in. So I know Chris Ballard has said that Jim Irsay has given him kind of carte blanche to do what he needs to do, but I also think that we have to operate in reality here and know that the Colts aren't going to go hog wild in free agency and sign a bunch of guys. And so I think a guy like Dio is, like you said, maybe more expendable than you'd like him to be. Just I think Chris Ballard in a different world, Chris Ballard would be like, I drafted him, he's performed, I'm bringing him back. Like that's the way it's going to be. But this team has too many other holes, I think, maybe to continue to do that. Again, it's hard for me to say because I like investing in the defensive line and talented young players. So I'm kind of in between. Like again, I actually think on the rest of this list, I would lean toward just let the guy walk. This is the other one where I'm a little torn. I think maybe just let him walk, but I
That's
am
fair.
I am a little torn.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a case of letting him walk. I think it's a case of some team's going to offer him, let's say, $10 million a year. Like, are you going to match that? Like, I don't think you match that over 3 years. I don't like this. I don't know what his actual value would be, but I wouldn't pay, $10 million for Dio Dankbo annually. Now, maybe they do. Maybe some other team will. But that's just my thinking on the matter. I'm no cap guru. I'm not Dio's agent. Dio, if I shortchanged you, I'm sorry, brother. Get your money, get your coins. But that's just my thinking on the matter. Seriously, because of, as you mentioned, the investments on the defensive line already. Now, the rest of this list, like you said, that's when it gets a little bit murky. We talked about Ryan Kelly, what he
Hmm.
means to the team. He's dealing with just age as well. And he mentioned in his near the end of the season, hey, my knee may never be the same. Now, he wasn't saying this like I can't play anymore. He was just saying I have to accept reality and I might not be, feeling as great as I used to. But I
Right.
do think that he is, when he plays, he's still a solid center. I just think that the Colts have kind of given him that writing on the wall where it's like, we didn't offer you an extension, not even a 1 year deal. You got injured in your prove it year. He was very candid about how they'd never had any talks about an extension. And even just
Right.
playing in his final game at Lucas Oil Stadium, you could see the emotion, and it felt like the end. Now, obviously, things could change. Jim Irsay, Chris Ballard could have a change of heart. Chris Ballard mentioned in his season-ending press conference that he had, I don't think he said, I think he said actually in his season-ending press conference that he hadn't talked to Ryan Kelly just yet about the future, but those conversations will come. And Kelly made it clear he still wants to play, doesn't want to
Right.
give it up. It's not like Indy or nowhere. It's just that I think that he would prefer to end it here. And he's been their longest senior player and a good player. I know he caught a lot of stuff this year when he came out and kind of criticized AR for not upholding the standard and all those things. But keep in mind, Ryan Kelly's career has been pretty solid in Indy. Former first round pick. I believe he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He's had some success with this team. Obviously, landed some big deals, and so yeah, I understand some of the vitriol that he was getting. Well, I don't understand. I don't agree with it. I understand it. I don't agree with it. But keep in mind, again, he doesn't ask to be hurt either in his last season. So if you want to move on for age or health or just money, that's understandable. But I do think he can still be a good player. Now, the rest of this
For
list,
sure.
Jim, um, I want your thoughts on Julian Blackman because I feel like we have the same conversation every year, unfortunately, which is, man, this dude can really play, but man, this dude gets hurt. So I don't know.
I'm out. I think I'm out. And here's the reason why. We talked, and you guys had a great conversation. I would highly encourage people to go listen to what you and Paul Daner talked about in terms of Lou Anarumo. The injuries are the place I'd start for why I'd be out. The second one is I think they need to spend significantly at safety. I know that's kind of crazy because that's not where a lot of NFL teams are spending right now, but I think Lou Anarumo would be the first and has been the first to tell you that when he lost quality safety play in Cincinnati, that is a big reason why his defense
Yeah,
fell
when
off a
Jesse
cliff.
when Jesse Bates left, their defense took a nosedive. And obviously there's other factors there, but he made it very clear just how good Jesse Bates is. And I think if you dive deeply into it, I wrote about this. You can check it out at The Athletic, done some Lou Anarumo pieces. When you look at the numbers, you look at what he meant to that team, you hear the quotes from Lou Anarumo, both past and present. Yes, Jim, you are dead right on the safety play being very big for this defense, which to what Paul was saying is very complicated. Now, obviously, Lou might change some of that, being a newer DC here and having to implement his system, and he won't just throw everything at everyone all at once. But there definitely needs to be some sort of high level, high IQ, and durability on that back end. Because again, Julian Blackman has all those things. He has playmaking, he has IQ, he can do those things. It's the health that just scares me every time.
It's exactly that. This is where they need to be. It's funny. Again, I'm looking at the PFF list because I feel like it's a good guideline for where free agents are going to be. They have Javon Holland as a top 5 free agent. They compare him and his free agent case to Jesse Bates. I think it's again. I'm not saying you have to go get Javon Holland, but there are some quality safeties and quality DBs in this class, and I just think that that's where the Colts need to. We talked about it a minute ago. Like, okay, can they afford to bring back Dio when they need to spend on other needs? This is one of the other needs, and I don't even think Julian Blackmon played like that poorly. I don't think he was, considering the injury he played through. I try to give him some grace on that, but I just think that the quality of play and needs to be raised. And you're going to bring in somebody from the outside. Maybe it's I think Justin Reed is also a free agent from the Chiefs. Like, again, a guy who's playing Super Bowl pedigree. I would not be surprised if that's somebody that Chris Ballard tries to bring in. Somebody like that, I should say. Just guys that can do the things that Chris Ballard talked about in his offseason, his end of season press conference, which was raise the standard, expect more out of his teammates. Again, Kenny Moore can't be the only guy in the room trying to get everybody to raise their level of play.
Right. Same with
and again,
Forrest Buckner and
right, exactly.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, no, for sure. But they need to bring in guys from the outside. Again, if Justin Reed hits the free agent market and the Chiefs are willing to let him go, I'm not saying he's like the perfect fit for Lou Anarumo's defense. I'm truly not. I don't know Justin Reed's game well enough. I am talking about the terms of he's going to be in 3 Super Bowls in a row, right? Like, this is a guy that has that kind of pedigree, a guy who understands what the standard needs to be and should be. And I think between Lou Anarumo's need for the defense and between Chris Ballard's stated need to bring in guys with that kind of pedigree, this is the place where you can do that. To me, is that safety. Safety is the place you can invest and in a high quality player. I don't know if you agree, but that's kind of where I'm at on it.
I agree. And I definitely think that, again, when we talk about team needs, and I've written about this already, I think that in free agency, you need to go out and get, as you said, a proven, established safety. And again, credit to Julian Blackmon. He played through a torn right labrum pretty much the entire season. Could have got surgery. And he was very candid about it. He's like, hey, man, my teammates are looking at me like, hey, we need you. And he was like, man, I wanted to be out there for him. He said, I just didn't want to spend an entire season wondering what if I played, what could have changed if I did play. And he was saying he hopes that the toughness he showed will prove to teams that he cares, more about his team sometimes in his own body than his own health. And so we'll see how that plays out. He was saying he's pretty open to any option. And he kind of has to be, because he doesn't have much leverage in any situation because of the injury history. But like you said, probably a more stable, durable safety is worth it. And keep in mind too, which we didn't really hit on, Julian Blackmon was playing out of position.
I know. I was just going to bring this up. I was going to add this right at the end. I'm so glad you're doing it. Go ahead.
Yeah, he had a career year last year at strong safety, and then they were like, well, we know you can play both, so we'll put you at free safety, put Nick Cross at strong safety. And then Nick Cross had a solid season. He had a career year at strong safety. But if you look and say, okay, who was the better strong safety in a vacuum, it's probably a Julian Blackmon. He hinted at it throughout the season. He's like, hey, I'm playing out of position. I'm not really playing my role. I'm just doing this for the team. And so maybe you do need to go out and just get a true free safety and someone this is their position and they know like the back of their hand.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And again, this is credit to Julian Blackmon, because he did willingly play out of position, and after having a great year playing more in the box near the line of scrimmage. And so, again, I don't know that. It's unfair almost to knock him for playing through an injury and playing slightly out of position. I think he's kind of a nice, jack of all trades type of safety. It's just the Colts maybe don't need that guy right now. I think they need somebody that is a little bit more ball hockey, free, like you said, true free safety type of player. So exactly. I'm with you. I definitely think it's a little bit unfair to knock Julian Blackmon. I'm just not sure that he's the right fit for this team between the injuries and the way he plays is necessarily the right fit for this team at this time. So I agree that they could probably let him walk. After this, like you said, I'm the last 3 names on here, it becomes far less compelling to me. I also I will tell you this. I follow the Colts 365 days a year. I was caught off guard by the fact that EJ Speed turns 30.
Okay, I'm glad you said this. So I have always felt this way about him because he was sort of a late bloomer.
Yeah.
And then he didn't become a starter until this year. Which
Right.
seems kind of crazy, right? Like you would think, man, no, EJ Speed's been here for a while. No, he was not a full-time starter until this year. He took over last year after the Colts got rid of Shaq. And so it might have seemed like a longer time, but no. And then also just the energy he provides, the way he acts in the locker room. He's a funny dude, charismatic, all those things.
Yeah.
And so you think he's a bit younger. He doesn't carry himself like a guy who, and maybe that's because, to my knowledge, he doesn't carry himself like the quote unquote old head.
Right.
DeForest Buckner walks in and it's like, oh, DeForest Buckner's here and things like that. Ryan Kelly and others. And not to say EJ Speed doesn't take his game serious because he does. And I know people can roll their eyes and things like that. But the dude does care a lot about football. I've had a lot of conversations with him about his love of the game, his journey. I mean, he went to Tarleton State, and none of you ever heard of that school before EJ Speed, got drafted by the Colts. And he became a really good player. They hit on him as a
Yeah.
prospect, as a pick. He's played, but to your point, being 30 is crazy to say with EJ Speed in the same sentence. And then also his play, while it's improved, I just don't think that it's necessarily good enough if you want this defense to take it a step forward next season. I think that this year sort of exposed that EJ Speed may not be an every down linebacker. He may just be a spot guy or a third down guy or somebody like that. And I think one of the things that I read about in the story was he had a hard time in pass coverage. And
Mhm.
so if you're looking at your linebacker core and your anchors are Zaire Franklin, who's not that great in pass coverage, as well as EJ Speed, who's not that great in pass coverage, you probably need one of them to be upgraded in that area. And obviously, they're not moving on from Zaire Franklin. And again, roll your eyes all you want. They extended him. He's a team captain. Yes, the podcast decisions that he made were questionable to say the least, but I do think that he's safe in Indianapolis. He's not going anywhere. However, EJ Speed, on the other hand, I do think that this is a position where the Colts could either, look at Jalen Carlisle to step up, draft another
Yeah. That's what I was wondering.
linebacker. Chris Ballard has done well drafting linebackers, or
For sure.
also, look at maybe somebody on the free agency market. But I wonder if Jalen Carlisle could slot into that more rangy linebacker role, which we kind of saw towards the end of the season when he got healthy. He showed some of that ability. Obviously, the Colts would have loved to see a lot more of him to make that decision a bit easier. But if I'm a betting man, I would not bet on EJ Speed continue his career in Indianapolis.
Yeah, Jalen Carlisle is what you think. I mean, shoot, the guy played safety in college. Like they want him to be a rangier pass coverage type of linebacker. Now, whether he can do that, as a full time starter, and as your other linebacker in nickel packages, that kind of thing. Maybe even in dime if you want to take Zaire Franklin off the field and have somebody that's a little bit rangier on the field. But again, it might be a lot to put on Jalen Carlisle. I
Exactly.
don't
That's what I
know,
was thinking. Yeah.
but like I think at this point. EJ Speed has proven himself to be probably more of a third or fourth linebacker on a team, which is a quality special teams player, third or fourth linebacker. That's a good role for any player in the NFL. But I think this was one of those spots where I thought about. I'm not saying it's definitively, but one of those spots where I thought about where Chris Ballard again was talking about not having enough competition. For it just felt like going into the year, it was like, yeah, Franklin and Speed are the starting linebackers, and after you wrote about numerous times, like them getting exposed in pass coverage and getting beat over the middle of the field. I was wondering, like, should they have just assumed that those two guys were going to be good enough to play? And, they have Grant Stewart, mostly a special teams guy. They drafted Jalen Carlisle, but he was kind of converting, and it's not necessarily, he's a rookie, day 3 pick. Like, you weren't expecting him to bring competition necessarily right away. It struck me as one of those spots where Chris Ballard thought maybe I didn't bring in enough competition to push these guys to play better. So again, one of those spots where I thought that might have been where the Colts could have done better to upgrade. Now, maybe Jalen Carlisle ends up being that guy that they're hoping he can be, but wouldn't be surprised if they took a swing on a veteran linebacker in free agency, maybe even drafted a guy on early day 3 kind of thing. That's where Chris Ballard tends to like to do that day 3, but linebacker tends to be a spot where a new defensive coordinator can bring in somebody he knows and trusts and help teach the defense to some of the other guys on the team. That's traditional. I mean, you look at even like a Dan Quinn bringing in Bobby Wagner with the Commanders. They obviously knew each other from Seattle. Bobby Wagner was obviously a different player in Seattle, but Still had a great year, and again helped teach the defense that the Commanders ended up playing into the NFC Championship game. Just one example. There are plenty of them out there, but I do think that this is a place where the Colts could spend a minimal amount of money, to bring in somebody that could help, up the quality of play and teach Lou
Hmm.
Anarumo's defense.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that is certainly something to consider when you look at this Colts defense, which has to get better. It has to get better. It was not good any of the years during Gus Bradley's tenure, and obviously why you bring in a guy like Lou Anarumo is to change that. And so
Mm.
to wrap up the last of the list, we won't get too deep into these guys. Molly
Yeah, these
Cox,
guys are. Yeah,
number 6, and then Joe Flacco, number 7. I think Mo is an average tight end at best in the NFL. I do think
yeah,
that he could provide. I think that he would actually be more valuable on a team not named the Colts because he is a pretty good run blocker. He does catch timely passes. Is he going to be a big target? In the passing game, no, he's never been that throughout his career, at least in Indianapolis, and I don't expect that to change. Now that he's 31 and about to be 32, going to another team. And he mentioned that he wants to win, and so that might
yeah.
be reading the tea leaves. Does he really explore other options? And people are saying, well, what other options does he have? He doesn't do anything. Trust me, teams can always use a guy who, again, is durable, can freaking run block, and makes the occasional catch. And he won't cost much. And so, and then also on the flip side, the Colts have to upgrade at tight end. And so you have to make a decision on him or Colin Granson or somebody. Now, you bring one of them back, whatever. But we're all going to be looking at you like, what did you tangibly do to try to help that room in a
Right.
big, big way? Because even watching throughout the playoffs, you look at the success these quarterbacks are having, especially Jaden Daniels, Zach Ertz. Like, he had a great, crazy season. He had a crazy game to end the year where it's like you need to give Anthony that big body across the middle. Somebody who's more prolific probably in the passing game than Willie Cox. But Mo is someone who I think has value around the league, stand-up guy, all those things. And then the last one, I'll let you weigh in here. Joe Flacco, who told us he made it very clear towards the end of the season when he was playing again and Anthony was hurt that he doesn't, he wasn't interested in the whole, this could be the end. Maybe I'll ride off into the sunset type of thing, win a game, end his career on a win. Nah, I don't think he was feeling any of that. He still wants to play. He said he hadn't thought about the future as far as his life after football. And what's your opinion on what he showed this year?
Um,
Some head
you know
shaking.
what? Yeah, he was better than I expected him to be. I think he's fine. I think he's a fine backup if he wants to keep playing. It should probably be somewhere else. I'm not a big fan of the idea of I kind of want if Anthony Richardson goes down or doesn't play well enough, I would like somebody to be able to come in and run a similar type of offense. This is what I prefer for the Colts.
I agree.
I don't think you can do that with Joe Flacco, obviously, who's
No,
pretty
we
much
saw
the
we saw some RPOs with Joe Flacco. He had the one where they didn't get the 4th and 1, and I was just thinking, why the heck did you have him run the ball at all? But
yeah.
continue.
No, I would prefer. I don't know. I was reading the story somewhere. Maybe it was ESPN. Daniel Jones was an idea for the Colts as back. I like that. I actually like Daniel Jones. He's got some starting experience. He is a good runner of the football. You could put him in and not change too much of what you have to do.
And he
I
played
kind
like
of feel
freaking, he played like the best quarterback of all time the last time I believe they faced each other in
yeah
a Colts and Giants uniform. The Colts are the reason why he probably got paid. He balled out that game. I believe the last game was 2022. I want to say Daniel Jones scored like 4 total touchdowns and they clinched the playoff berth. And that was how he ended up getting paid. And
yeah
so,
yeah.
yeah, if you're the coach, you're like, just bring in that guy.
I mean I like him as a backup who can compete, who will push. He's by all accounts like teammates loved him in New York. I know things didn't go great for him, but teammates loved him. He works his butt off. He can run he probably can run a similar style offense that Anthony Richardson can run, and he will push him. Like he will push him. There's no doubt Daniel Jones could push him to become the starter. Like
Yeah.
that. If they brought in Daniel Jones, I think you would probably have I wouldn't say a legitimate training camp competition because I think they want Anthony Richardson to be the guy, so he will probably be favored going into that kind of thing. But if they struggled and they were just like, I don't think this is working with Anthony Richardson, you could put in Daniel Jones and win. I mean, I know people are going to laugh at that, but the Giants did. The Giants went to the playoffs and won a playoff game with Daniel Jones. So, no, I'm not saying he wants to wants to leave Minnesota if that's where he ends up wanting to stay. But anyway, point being on Joe Flacco is I think they need to bring in somebody that's a little bit more similar to Anthony Richardson, somebody that's a little bit younger probably, and somebody that's maybe a little bit more willing to help. Because I'm not sure that was
Yeah,
Joe Flacco's specialty with Anthony Richardson. So I think they need to invest a little bit more in Joe Flacco. Now, if Joe Flacco wants to go be a backup somewhere else, I think there are some teams that he would be good for. But I just not sure that I think the Colts need to find a higher quality backup quarterback, which we've been saying throughout this thing. They need to do better here, better here, better here, better here. This is why it'll be tough to bring a guy like Dio Dengbo back because you need to improve in so many other spots.
absolutely. And I think Justin Fields is another name that you hear
Yep.
often. He's a guy that can run some of the same stuff as Anthony.
Yep.
He's younger. He's won some games. He's proven to be more durable than Anthony. And so that's the name that I also hear as far as bringing in a high caliber quarterback who can
For sure.
really challenge Anthony. I don't know if you get a challenge if you keep Joe Flacco around. So I wouldn't expect him to be brought back to Indianapolis. And honestly, it's fair to wonder just how much love he'll get around the league. Because remember, even after that renaissance with Cleveland takes him to the
Right.
playoffs, he had one suitor, and it was the Colts. And so I just don't know how much that'll change given his play in 2024, which wasn't that great. I mean, it was okay. 12 touchdowns, 7 picks, 2-4 as a starter. He was fine in moments, but I think as we saw, if you leave Joe Flacco in there for an extended period of time, things do not go well for your offense anymore. And that's fine. He's 40. I mean, we can't keep looking at guys like they're LeBron James or Tom Brady and expect them all to just be great at this older age. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, for crying out loud, looked like a shell of himself when I was watching him, earlier this season. So keep that in mind too. So to transition a bit, I will say, now that we've kind of wrapped up our free agent segment, real quick, I do want to get into Lou Anarumo
Yeah.
and some of my thoughts on meeting him for the first time. First of all, the dude is all business. I'll say that. I mean, he just walked in and I thought he was going to have like a little statement or something and say, oh, I'm happy to be here or thankful to this and that. Now he said all those things, but he just walks in this plain gray hoodie and I was like, get the guy a Colts hoodie. Like, what are we doing? Now that's my soapbox James speech right there. Anybody who's hired by the Colts, go in some random locker or random equipment room, check and see if it's clean, and then throw him a large so he can put it on and look like a member of the Colts. But no, seriously, he walked in and he just goes far away. So we were able to, ask questions for about 20 minutes to the new DC. And one of my biggest takeaways was one, he's not going to take any mess. So all that ego stuff, I think that is going to change drastically. And by ego stuff, I mean what DeForest Buckner was saying, what Chris Ballard kind of validated, and when Lou Anarumo was asked about, how are you going to basically establish your culture, he was like, I'm going to be a truth teller. I'm going to tell everybody what they need to hear. And he was like, that's just going to be the end of it. And he put emphasis on all of them. So he's like, I don't care what you've done. I don't care your resume. I don't care how long you've been in the league. And so it sounds like even before he got here, the Colts needed a bit more of that. And so that's one thing that stood out to me as well. And the other thing was reading the tea leaves as far as just players. We asked, why things kind of fell apart with the Bengals, and he didn't really answer. He was like, injuries and, inconsistency, and, you learn to move on. But then when you ask him about Jesse Bates and DJ Reader, two guys he lost in free agency and two guys who were vital to that Bengals defense, which, by the way, was the last defense to hand the Chiefs a loss in the playoffs. He was like, those guys meant a whole lot. And when you lose them, they hurt your defense. And so I'm curious to know your thoughts on, either philosophy, his personality, whatever takeaways you had on Lou's intro with the Colts.
Yeah, so there's a couple of big picture things I'll say is that, one of the first questions somebody asked was, did they have a prior relationship with Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard? And the answer was effectively no, which
Yeah.
I appreciated. I appreciated that out of Shane Steichen, willing to go outside of the comfort zone a little bit to go get somebody that he didn't know. He just respected. Whether or not you agree with whether he respects him for his defenses is up to you, but I kind of like the idea of, hey, I'm going to go find a guy whose defenses I find challenging and competitive and hard to beat and game plan against and add him to the team. So that was my first thought on that. Second is I do truly like Lou Anarumo's style. I know it all fell apart for him in Cincinnati, but I love the amoeba style defenses. He says he grew up watching. I mean, he's from New Jersey. He grew up watching the Bill Belichick's of the world, and he doesn't have a relationship with him either, but he likes that Belichick's defenses could adapt to be anything that an offense didn't want to see. And I think that's the right idea to me. That's the right concept to me. It's pretty much the polar opposite of what you had in Gus Bradley, which was I'm going to play what I play well, and we're going to do it so well you're not going to be able to beat it. Which there is merit to that. It works across the NFL. Don't get me wrong. There are places where that has worked very well. But I like the other one. I like the other way. I like to have the defense that can kind of be a chameleon and change what they do. And I think that's who Lou Anarumo is now. The issue I think is going to be is that I don't know if that takes easily in year one. You have to have the right players to do it. You have to be willing to spend on defense and add talent to do it. We'll see if the Colts are, but I do worry that if this is the end of the Steichen regime, obviously that'll be the end of Lou Anarumo, and he won't have more than the 1 year to implement this defense. I don't think it's necessarily like they can be good next year with Lou, but I don't know that they're going to be peak what they could be with Lou Anarumo in year one.
That's fair.
So I definitely think like that's going to be an issue for me because like, I think when you talked with Paul, the concepts are tough. Like it's challenging defense for the players, especially for young players, to learn how to play in this defense. And I think that takes time and is worthwhile ultimately, but it takes time. And you might see the Colts struggle early on to kind of adapt to all the different types of play calls and schemes that he wants to run.
Jim, I want him fired after the first game when the Colts inevitably don't win. I can't say lose because they technically haven't lost every season opener for the last decade or whatever because they had a tie, my very first NFL game that I covered. But when that happens, Jim, I want him out. But no, I agree. I definitely think that you can't expect him to come in and in one offseason and just say, all right, boom, you got it. Because I think part of the reason why you saw that Bengals defense, which Paul, said kind of carried that team to back-to-back AFC championship games and obviously the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Was because he had been there for a while. All the guys knew it like the back of their hand, and there was just this knowing of what he expected. And so there is going to be a transition period. And like most things, you can't really embrace all the newness or all the different changes until you have some real games and some real adversity in those games.
For sure.
And things don't go right or whatever, or you have chances to correct things and things like that. So we'll see. And then also, like we've talked about, kind of tying it back to the free agency thing, who are you going to go get to help him, recreate that vision? Because as I've written, the goal when getting Lou Anarumo was to get Lou Anarumo that obviously built the defenses that took the Bengals to the AFC Championship game, which is, seems like a lifetime away for the Colts. But they want to get back there, obviously. Not the guy over the last 2 years where this defense was just so bad that they couldn't even make the playoffs, especially this past year when Joe Burrow is balling out and Trey Hendrickson is balling out and Jamar Chase is balling out. And it's like, wow, you got, studs, all pros at three of the most important positions in football, and you can't make the playoffs. And so it is. And again, it's a gamble. It's a risk. It's a calculated risk. I understand some Colts fans being upset about it. But the funny thing about it, Jim, is like, and I think you're the one who really drove this point home to me. At the NFL level, you're never going to hire a defensive coordinator who has like no flaws. It's either you hire a guy you haven't heard of, or you hire a DC who's got experience who failed somewhere else and was fired.
Yep.
And honestly, coaches get hired and fired all the time. We see it every offseason where, Lou Anarumo was out of a job for 11 days, maybe something like that. Like it wasn't that long. And so you have to kind of be realistic is all I'm saying if you're a Colts fan. Whereas, you're not going to go out and get Spags from the Chiefs because he's, all-time great. Like he has no flaws at all. His resume is impeccable. There's going to be some gamble there, and you just have to be confident that you can, obviously win that bet, roll that dice and win. And so we'll see. But I like Lou. I have no dog in the fight when it comes to did he win or lose his opening press conference. It's always a conversation. People always ask me that. What'd you think of how he is? What's his personality? Who cares? I mean,
who cares? Yeah, I don't care.
Nick Sirianni's press conference with Philly when he opened it up was terrible. Like he looked like a nervous wreck. And now he's going to his second straight Super Bowl, which I guess provides a good little segue to our last segment here regarding the Super Bowl. We got Chiefs-Eagles, a rematch of the 2022 Super Bowl, which I'm cool with. I like rematches, like I said. You don't like the Chiefs don't like you. the Chiefs are like Goliath. You're the team that America's rooting for to beat the Chiefs. I love all of that. And no matter what y'all say, you liars, y'all like to hate watch just as much as me. It's
Yep.
sports are always better. I don't care what anybody says. Sports are always better, at least for me personally, seriously.
Yeah.
When there is a team to hate. And
Yep.
I've been on both sides of it. Now, I will admit I've become a lot less like emotionally tied to teams and things like that since I've become a professional writer and things like that. It's been a lot easier, honestly, for me to just kind of watch the game, appreciate the greats, and laugh at the funny moments, whatever. So I'm never like losing my mind at a game. However, when I was younger, man, I hated the Warriors growing up with Kevin Durant. I hated, the Miami Heat with LeBron James. I
Yep.
hated the Tom Brady Patriots. But
Yep.
guess who was watching? Little old hater James and millions of other haters. And so it should be a great Super Bowl. But I want to ask you this because you hinted at it early on the podcast. When you watch this Eagles defense, or not defense, I'm sorry, this Eagles offense,
Yeah.
with Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts,
Yep.
and what they built over there, does it make you think a little bit about the build in Indianapolis and the vision they're trying to go after with Anthony Richardson?
So much, so much. And here's the funny part is that Shane Steichen helped build that. Like, he helped build that
Yeah.
in Philadelphia. That
Yeah.
offense is something that he helped construct. Now, they've evolved a little bit with Kellen Moore this year in the passing game, but Jeff Stalin was there, the run game coordinator, and with Shane Steichen. And so I watched that offense and think, and I've thought this since they hired Shane Steichen and since they drafted Anthony Richardson, be that. That's what you want to be that offense. Now, they have an all-pro caliber offensive line and
Their
and
offensive
across
line
the board.
is incredible. Oh my gosh.
And Saquon Barkley is probably the best running back in football right now.
Yes.
And apologies to Derrick Henry. I mean, they're right there. But I just don't think that you're that necessarily far away from building that kind of offense, or at least being in that mold, right? Like, they're not going to be the Eagles offense next year, but you have a quality offensive line that is pretty good run blocking. If you invest in it some more, you can be even better. You don't have Saquon Barkley, but you do have Jonathan Taylor, who at his best can be a top 5 running back in the NFL. We've seen it. And at the end of the year, he looked like one. You have a mobile quarterback who helps your running game and can be a part of the running game in Anthony Richardson. Obviously, he needs to take a step forward in his passing, but as you watch with Jalen Hurts, they don't ask him to do a whole lot. And because the running game is so strong, they create one-on-one matchups so often around for A.J. Brown and for Dallas Goedert and for Devonta Smith. Again, super talented team, incredible roster that Howie Roseman has built in Philadelphia. But it almost feels like the Colts can be everything's a little bit lesser of a version, right? It's a little bit lesser of an offensive line. The weapons are a little bit lesser. Obviously, Michael Pittman is not A.J. Brown, and Alec Pierce is not Devonta Smith, but they have quality. Josh Downs is maybe not the guy over the middle. Or, I mean, he's a great guy over the middle, and they probably have, actually, that's probably where they have a better advantage there. And then obviously Anthony Richardson needs to take multiple steps up to get to Jalen Hurts' level. But it doesn't feel like that feels like it should be the example. That should be the mold, right? Is create this great roster, particularly on offense, around Anthony Richardson, require him to do less as a passer, and then when you do ask him to be a passer, make it in these one-on-one situations where you know your weapons can win. It's almost frustrating to watch because I think the Colts can be that, and they have the guy who helped design that type of offense in Shane Steichen. It's not that far away from being that kind of, again, in that mold, not saying elite level offense.
No. But just a competent,
Yes.
Offense that's able to move the ball. Yes.
They should be able to do that kind of thing and essentially grind teams into dust in the running game. I think we've seen the power of the running game coming back in the NFL this year. Not just running backs, but quarterbacks running. I mean, look at the way Patrick Mahomes decided to beat the Bills. He beat him with his arm a little, but he ran more yards and more touchdowns than Josh Allen did. Like, quarterback run game is a powerful tool. Having a upper tier running back who can hit home runs. It's not just, I think what the Eagles did. Sorry, I'm ranting now, but like what the Eagles did in this offseason was so smart. It was like, hey, we have DeAndre Swift, we have quality running backs who get, maybe even a little more than the offensive line gives. But let's get a guy who can hit when there's a seam. Let's get a guy who can hit a home run. Just like, again, it's the force multiplier thing. Like, what's instead of getting 15 yards or 16 yards, let's get 25 or 50 or 60 like Saquon Barkley does. You know what? The Colts have a guy like that. Jonathan Taylor can hit those home runs.
Yeah,
he has to hold on to the ball as he crosses the goal line, but he can hit those home runs. And so, again, it's the mold, right? It's the mold that you want to be. If I'm Shane Steichen, I'm watching Philadelphia being like, that's what we got to be. That's the team we want to be.
Yeah. to your point, it's like going from a V6 to a V12 when you put Saquon Barkley behind that
Yeah.
offensive line in that system. And obviously, they're riding him literally to the Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know if anybody's had a playoff run as a running back that's been as great to this point as Saquon Barkley. Like it, for him to have 3 60+ yard touchdowns in the playoffs alone is outrageous.
Ridiculous.
Like that's a video game type of thing. You almost just expect him to do it. And so, to your point, I agree. I definitely think that you want to see some of that. And we saw obviously what the Colts' run game can be when it's at its peak powers. We saw it against the Titans where they didn't even have to throw the ball hardly. And I
exactly.
mean, JT and AR ran wild all over that team. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, Anthony has to become a better passer because for as rough as Jalen was early in his career, he wasn't as bad as this when it comes to making the layup throws and making the easier throws and obviously the completion percentage, all those things. Like this is a massive offseason for Anthony, and he has to prove that he's a capable passer in the NFL because quite honestly, right now, he is not a proven passer at all. There's moments, there's, drives, but there hasn't been enough completeness over a sustained amount of games for anybody to trust his arm as much as you need to, even in those one-on-one situations. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. But to your point, I completely agree, man. Like that's the build. And honestly, that's why they paid JT. I think they saw Anthony early on his rookie year before he got hurt and was like, we might have something with this guy. Let's pay our running back. Let's make life easier. Let's build it through the ground game. And so obviously going into year 3, you're not where you want to be. But that to me is still the vision. And it could still possibly work. A lot of work cut out for everybody involved, but that is the vision. Now, to kind of transition a little bit to the Chiefs side of things.
Yeah.
As I told you, I was cool with whoever won that game. Now, obviously, I wasn't rooting one way or the other for one team to win. Like I said, I don't necessarily care when it comes to teams as far as just like my heart. Like I was watching the game at the bar with one of my buddies, and there was a Bills fan next to us, and she was losing it after every play, understandably, because who wouldn't in a game like that? Sure, but I was thinking I better keep some of my Patrick Mahomes praise down. This lady might beat me up. And so, yes, Josh Allen, heartbroken, like Lamar Jackson. It's fine. You're in the conference with the boogeyman. And me, I like the boogeyman sometimes. I like the villain. I think that every good sports story needs a villain. And so Patrick Mahomes is the villain outside of Kansas City, outside of Arrowhead Stadium. He is probably the most hated athlete in the NFL. You see players tweeting about the calls that he gets. You see people getting mad. Travis Kelce can taunt players and also date, Taylor Swift and also win big and all those things. But all that to say, I don't want it to overshadow the greatness we're seeing. Like it is unreal that they're going to 3 straight Super Bowls. And to me, as I tweeted out during the game, Jim, and I know you agree, they're the best team at executing when they absolutely need to. They're just better. Now they can argue the 4th down call or, he gets flags, others don't get, all those things. Yeah. We saw with Tom Brady. You know what Tom Brady was? He was better than everybody else.
Yep.
That's just what it was. And that's the same thing with Patrick Mahomes. Like you can make all these excuses, but when it comes down to making the play, more often than not, that guy will rip your heart out. And so I'm very curious to see how it goes. Like, and this is the thing. This is what's so great about sports to me. If Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs win, he's immortal, obviously. Yep. 3 times in a row. Hell, if you tell me he's the greatest quarterback ever, I might agree. Obviously Tom Brady's in that conversation, and he's still the GOAT in my eyes. But if you tell me Patrick's better, he's won 3 straight, nobody's ever done it, and he wins another Super Bowl MVP, hats off to you. But if Saquon Barkley, Jim, runs all over the Chiefs, you're a legend forever. You're a hero forever. And so again, I like the hero. I don't like games where it's like, oh man, like say if Josh Allen and them had won, and obviously I would have still watched the Super Bowl. I'm going to enjoy that. All that narrative about it's Super Bowl, nobody's going to watch. Yeah, right. Like you're all going to watch. Stop that. But with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, like there is no one to really hate in that situation. Like there's nobody to really hate on. If either guy wins, it's their first Super Bowl and they're stamped forever. Yeah. But in this scenario, oh, the line is drawn in the sand, baby. So I'm gonna enjoy this game, and whatever happens, happens. But like I said, I like when the king makes it back to the threshold or to the nearly to the throne again, and there's a challenger there like, nah, this might have to change this time. So we'll
I
see.
I agree. Sports have always been better when somebody has to slay the dragon, right? It's the Yankees, it's the like you said, the Heat, the Bulls, like whatever. I mean, nobody ended up ever beating the Bulls with Jordan, but like, at least not during those. I guess that's not true.
I was about
I
to
should say
say,
that. Yeah, I
I
mean,
got
there's
some
that one.
Isaiah Thomas fans I know tuning in,
Well,
Detroit
oh yeah,
Pistons.
early on for sure, and even then, Jordan returned during that half seat, the 45 Jordan that he got beat. So that
Oh,
I have
well,
to
they told
acknowledge
me
that.
growing up in the Chicago area that doesn't count. So I don't know what you're talking about, Jim.
But but no, I mean to the point is I completely agree with you. Sports are better with villains, and I don't see the Chiefs as a villain. Like I mean, I understand why they are for a lot of people. I was rooting for the Chiefs in that game just because I like greatness. I like rooting for great teams to do accomplish some things that we've never seen before. Like I wouldn't have been mad if the Bills won. It would have been awesome if Josh Allen had won.
Absolutely.
Great for Buffalo. Love those Buffalo fans. If they had slayed the dragon and beaten the Chiefs, that would have been so cool. I would have loved it. But I am pumped that I get to watch. No team that has won two in a row has been back to the third Super Bowl. They had no one's done it. Like obviously teams have been to the Super Bowl three times in a row. Sorry, Bills fans, but the Chiefs have done something that nobody's ever done anyway, winning back to back and then getting to a third. It's incredible to watch. We are going to be talking about this team for the rest of our lives. Like we will be talking about Patrick Mahomes and these Chiefs teams as the best, some of the best teams we've ever watched, and I love that. I love that we might see something we never see again. And I don't want to say that too much because I thought with Tom Brady we were seeing stuff we might never see again, and then it's only been like a few years after he retired that Mahomes is topping him. Like you said, he is. Maybe he's not the GOAT already, but he is on a trajectory and a pace that Tom Brady was not on. So
Yeah.
it's insane what he's accomplishing right now. And if they win, I'll be thrilled. I mean, seeing like Super Bowl football has been happening since like 1970, and it's been what 55 years. No one's done this. Like it'd be so cool to see somebody
Yeah,
win three in a row.
this would be crazy. And honestly, if Patrick Mahomes wins this championship, to me, he's the second greatest quarterback ever, no question. Better than everybody else. He's only 28, which is like scary. And you look at his resume, and I saw somebody tweet about this, like, "Oh, my hot take is that Patrick Mahomes is already a Hall of Famer." That's not a hot take. He could have walked off the field last year, and never touched the football again, and been in the Hall of Fame.
I
Like I
think he could have
was,
done it the year before. You win two Super Bowls. Like look at Eli. He's
that's
getting
what
a
I'm
Hall of
saying.
Fame
You're
with two.
like you're getting in, and he's got the MVP, he's got the counting stats, all those things. I mean, I was even having this debate yesterday with my pops. And I know we're ranting and raving. We'll wrap this up, but I was telling him like if Lamar Jackson wins his third MVP, he's a Hall of Famer. Like whether he gets a Super Bowl or not, he's a Hall of Famer. Like the list of players who have won three Super Bowl, or not three Super Bowls, but three MVPs. It's Peyton Manning with five. It's Aaron Rodgers with four. Then it's Tom Brady, Jim Brown, and I believe it will be like Lamar Jackson. Like that list is crazy. That's a crazy list. And
Yep.
so again, I think Johnny Unitas is in there as well. Shout out to the old Colts regime who might have been rolling their eyes when I mentioned that list and didn't throw him in there. But yeah, all that to say, it's been a crazy NFL season. We've seen a lot of crazy things, and it's getting down to a crazy end. And you have like on one side the challenger, the running back market savior in Saquon Barkley
Yeah.
versus the rich kids, who get everything that they want and have everything made for them. So that's kind of what it seems like. It's like how much can one guy win? Travis Kelce, you're handsome. Oh, you're gonna win Super Bowls. Oh, you're gonna date Taylor Swift. It's like I get it. I would want to hate too. So the last thing I'll say before we get out of here, and well, actually I'll back up. For those listening, we will have some cool things coming. I will say I have a story coming, and it's the premise of it is what if. Where we come up with some scenarios of what if this happened and this was flipped and this player was here. That'll be a fun story. Look out for that very soon. I also have a story on Sam Ellinger coming out very soon, his free agency, what he's thinking, what it means for AR, all of those things as well. But to wrap this up, I just want to say to all the haters out there, if you're like me, just be honest. Just be honest. Like, I don't want to hear the refs, chief for the Chiefs. Oh, we don't like. Just say you hate him because he's very good, which is why I hated Tom Brady. I hated Tom Brady as a kid because he won all the time.
Because he won.
One person shouldn't win that much, Jim. Like, you cannot. That's not fair. And it's not. Sports are not
Yeah.
fair, man. I tell people all the
I'll say it's not
time.
equitable, but it's pretty great to watch.
Exactly. So, longer episode than usual. Thank you all for kicking it with us. We will talk to you very soon. Probably next week after I said some of these articles come out. We have more to
Yep.
debate and things like that, and perhaps circle back to the Super Bowl conversations. But until then, thank you all for listening and have a great rest of your week.